the radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show. Hope you're all doing well, having a good week. We are ready. All right. So last night I was part of a debate. I'll have the video up in hopefully in a few days, weeks. We'll see when we get the video. I did a debate on Bitcoin. So I debated a Bitcoin advocate. I took the somewhat skeptical position about Bitcoin. I know that's not popular on the Super Chat and elsewhere, but that was me. And I thought it was good. But one of the things was a very loud room. There were a lot of people, like 200 people. This is in Puerto Rico, not far from where I live. And there was a huge amount of noise and conversation afterwards and yelling and arguing and everything. I feel like I'm losing my voice. So Bitcoin has taken my voice from me. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes today. Hopefully it's just me losing my voice, not me getting COVID. I don't think there was a lot of social distancing going on last night, and certainly no masks to be seen anywhere near. Jonathan says price is primary in Bitcoin. All right. I'm not convinced. I'm not not convinced about Bitcoin. Yeah. We'll see where it goes. We'll see what happens. Let's see. We've got a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk quickly about Greta. And we're going to talk about Facebook. Before I do that, I want to remind everybody, and thank you, Best Friend Hank and Jonathan, for contributing to the show. I want to remind everybody that Super Chat is open. It is a way to support the show. It is also a way to get the questions answered. I know many of you were quite excited by the show on Sunday, where we landed up talking a lot about sex. Kama Sutra, if I remember right, came up. Those of you who missed it should go back and listen to the last third of the show. Anyway, you can ask me anytime about sex, if that is the topic you would like to be talking about. Just use the Super Chat. Put $20 on it, $100 on it, $500 on it. And I'm happy to talk about sex or any other issue you would like. So the beauty of Super Chat is you get to determine the topic and you get to incentivize me to talk about the topic. So go ahead, use the Super Chat feature. I think we've got a goal of $600 today, as we usually do. We're almost there. We've already got $10, so we're already rolling in that direction. So please come over and support the show. You can also support the show at yaronbookshow.com/support, Patreon, Subscribe Star, and Locals. All right. So we're going to do basically two topics, blah, 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 which is one topic in spite of the fact that it's 3 words, and Facebook bombshell revelations, the whistleblower testimony before Congress. We're going to, just the last week, we have discovered things about Facebook that we never, ever knew. All new stuff, very, very exciting. So don't miss it. And go to Twitter right now and let your friends know that we're here talking about Facebook and talking about blah, 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 and encourage them to join us because this is going to be a fun show. All right, let's start with Greta. We're not going to spend a lot of time on Greta, and out of her, 10-minute speech, I'm just going to play you the first minute and 45 seconds. You're going to get a flavor for it. This is the best minute 45 seconds of the speech anyway. It's the blah, blah, blah section of the speech. I don't know if you've watched this, but this is worth watching. Look at her eyes. Look at her expression. You tell me what this little girl looks like. I mean, she's not a little girl anymore. She's now 18. She's an adult. so we can make fun of her more than ever. But yeah, I mean, here is Greta. We're gonna play the clip.
There is no planet B. There is no planet blah. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah.
There's no plan B. So the context here, of course, is Greta's been warning us for years now that the world is going to hell, that civilization will end. I think now it's 10 years, 2 years ago it was 12 years, because of climate change. And that we, I take this personally, the baby boomers, the Generation X, the millennials have done nothing to prevent climate change. And all we do, and there is no plan B for civilization. There is no plan B for humanity. If the temperatures go to whatever they're expected to go within the next 10 years, then the seas will rise and the sun will shine, and I don't know, somehow we will all die, and her generation will have a rotten time of it. Not only will they suffer dramatically physical and emotional trauma, they will be, and there is no plan B. There's no other planet. There's nowhere else to go. So that's the context in which, and blah, 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 of course, represents what? It represents all you do is talk. Action is what we need. Action. Who else said action is what we need? All right, let's go back so you get the full kind of flavor.
There is no planet B.
Look at their eyes. Scary. Truly scary.
There is no planet blah. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah.
They love the blah, blah, blah.
This is not about some
Look at the... I stopped in the wrong place, but watch your eyes as she talks.
expensive, politically correct green act of bunny hugging or blah, blah, blah.
I love it. She's criticizing the politically correct. She's criticizing the politicians. She's criticizing all the corporate leaders that pretend to care about climate change. She's the only one who cares.
Build back better, blah, blah, blah. Green economy, blah, blah, blah.
Build back better is Biden. She hates Biden, right? He's part of the problem. Green economy. It's what all the conventional people think. No, we need action. What action? It doesn't matter, but we need action now.
Net zero by 2050, blah, blah, blah.
That's right. We want net zero tomorrow. None of this talking.
Blah, blah, net zero, blah, blah, blah. Climate neutral, blah, blah, blah. Our hopes and dreams drown in their empty words and promises. Of course, we need constructive dialogue, but they've now had 30 years of blah, 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 and where has that led us? Over 50% of all our CO2 emissions have occurred since 1990, and a third since 2005. If this is what they consider to be climate action, then we don't want it. They invite cherry-picked young people to meetings like this to pretend that they are listening to us. But they are not. They are clearly not listening to us. And they never have. Just look at the numbers. Look at the statistics. The emissions are still rising. The science doesn't lie.
Yeah, there's a section later on. Unfortunately, this clip doesn't have it. There's a section later on where she gets the entire audience going. What do we want? Just climate justice? She really knows how to play her audience. She really is, at the age of 18, a spectacular demagogue who really gets these audiences riled up and excited and motivated and frantic. There were demonstrations inspired by Greta at the Science Climate Conference somewhere in Italy, she is incredibly powerful deliverer of the message, and the message is: forget about ideas, forget about programs, forget about discussion and debate. Forget about thinking and convincing and cajoling. Forget about the economy. Forget about jobs. Forget about the green economy, Build Back Better. Forget about all these things. What we need now is action. Now, what does that remind you of? Who is all about action? Who only cares about action? Stop talking. Stop being so intellectual and philosophizing. Well, this is what fascists are all about. This is fascism. We need to solve the problem. How do you solve a problem? Let's just act. We just need to do something. We need to go out there and do something. What does doing entail? Well, turns out it almost always entails killing a bunch of people. Blah, blah, blah. So let's not blah, blah, blah. Let's not have a conversation. Let's not educate. Let's not teach. Let's not convince. Let's just act. And how? By destroying the world in which we live. By completely destroying the world in which we live. And remember, and you have to hold this in context, Greta belongs to a generation that if fossil fuels are not destroyed, are not eliminated, are not, if people don't follow her advice, Greta is born to a generation that will live longer than any generation has ever lived on planet Earth. They will live healthier lives. They will be safer from the weather than any generation has ever been. Fewer people from Greta's generation will die from weather-related events than from any generation in human history if we don't listen to her. She is, if you believe in the luck of being born in a particular time, in a particular place, she's one of the luckiest person on planet, in the history of mankind. Their entire generation is. All those people cheering her, all those people rallying around her. Greta is the beneficiary of 150 years of fossil fuels that have generated wealth and prosperity and life extension and quality of life improvement and better nutrition and better everything, better health, better life. And she spits on all of that. She spits on all of that. She denounces all of that. She wants to end it all. She wants to destroy the world, the best world that the world has ever seen in terms of material well-being that she has inherited. Blah, blah, blah. All right. That's what I have to say about Greta for today. I'm sure Action Jackson will turn it into a short video and we can put that up, right? All right. The main thing I want to talk about today is Facebook. And everything that's been going on around Facebook. So you probably know this. It's been in the news. It's been everywhere. Facebook has, over the last few weeks, the Wall Street Journal has been disclosing material that has been released by a whistleblower, in quotes, within Facebook, that has actively and systematically been stealing content from Facebook. And she has left Facebook and taken with her thousands of pages of content. And she has been distributing that content through the Wall Street Journal. Yesterday or the day before yesterday, she went on 60 Minutes. I've watched part of that. She went on 60 Minutes, revealed her identity for the first time. And today was in front of Congress, in front of a Senate subcommittee, talking about the Bombshell revelations that she has disclosed through all these thousands of pages. We have witnessed basically the world go frantic about these revelations. They've been called the biggest things since since Watergate. This is a bombshell. A bombshell, these revelations, because they reveal things about Facebook none of us could have imagined. So she was in front of Congress today. I watched part of that hearing as well, as much as I could stomach. Last week, a senior executive from Facebook, let me see if I can find her name. Yeah, I've got it here, Davis. Yeah, okay. So Facebook's head of global safety, right? Facebook's head of global safety was in front of Congress. She was drilled and questioned by Congress quite aggressively. I've covered congressional hearings before. I'll have something to say about the quality of this congressional hearing. But it won't be that different than what I've said before in the past about congressional hearings. It is. Anyway, we'll get to that. So, what did we discover? What did we discover from these massive thousands of pages, the revelations, the bombshell, the biggest story since, I don't know, since Watergate. Not the biggest story since Watergate is not the Washington Post story about the systematic, constant lying to the American people over the last 20 years about the war in Afghanistan and all the kids killed there for nothing. That's not the biggest story. That wasn't the equivalent of Watergate. That wasn't, the bombshell, because nobody cared. Nobody literally cared. It was brilliant reporting. It was really excellent piece. A big study, interviews, and transcripts of interviews from the decision makers in Afghanistan. Some of the most damning material we've ever seen on the nature and the functioning of the American government and how much it cares or not cares about the American people. And I did a show on it. I've mentioned it a couple of times since then. Nobody cares. No, I mean, I don't know if you care, but nobody out there cares. No, nobody in the media cares. Nobody covered it. Nobody did anything. Washington Post has put out the whole thing in a special supplement. It's all out there. Anybody can read it. It really is really good reporting. But Facebook, every news media outlet covered it. It was splashed across everything that I looked at today. It was #1 in Google News all day, and it's been that way for a week, but particularly today because of the congressional hearings. Not even to say what happened, Anyway, so this was the top. So what did we learn? What do we learn from this, from these revelations, right? It turns out that things that none of us knew, right? Facebook, treats influencers on the platform, influencers, people who have a lot of following, differently than they treat the average person. Shocking, just shocking. It's surprising, right? Facebook is having a hard time facilitating healthy conversations between strangers on the internet, particularly ones who disagree about politics. I didn't know that. Did you know that? It's hard. By the way, I'm taking a lot of this just because he put it so beautifully and brilliantly together. I'm taking a lot of this from Mike Solana. I've recommended his Substack before. I recommend it again. It's called Pirate Wires. He writes a lot about tech, about Silicon Valley. I generally, agree with what he writes. Not always, but I generally agree with what he writes. He works for a venture capital firm. Peter Thiel's, I think, venture capital firm in Silicon Valley. I think that's right. Anyway, he's often brilliant and always very good and always thought-provoking and stimulating. But the revelation that made the most news, other than polarization and I don't know, the fact that, you know, shockingly, did you know this? I don't know if you knew this, that Facebook actually encourages, you know, it encourages engagement. It feeds you stuff based on engagement. Shocking. And oh, the most shocking thing of all that came out of these hearings, the coming out of all the documents, just truly astounding for an American corporation. This is truly unbelievable. But Facebook tries to maximize profits. I know. I mean, by what right? By what right does it place profits as its primary motivation? Shareholder, what maximization? Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, where did America go wrong where its big businesses are trying to make money? It's just horrific and shocking. But the most important revelation, and the one that I think has caught, you know, the attention of most of the media and most of the people in Congress and everybody else, although we'll talk about Congress in a minute. It turns out that Instagram is making your teenage daughter want to kill herself. Well, not every teenage daughter. A small, tiny fraction of a percent of teenage girls. And, you know, we don't really have any evidence that it's actually making them want to kill themselves. But it turns out that Facebook's own research team has discovered this. Mark Zuckerberg buried it. And hey, this is the new tobacco. Literally, Facebook is killing our daughters. And it knows it, and it's hiding the facts from us. I mean, it really is, you know, unbelievable. So let's take the political side of this first. Most of the criticism here of Facebook is that they're not limiting this, the speech, limiting the communications of right-wingers enough. They're not restricting right-wingers enough. I mean, Zuckerberg basically did not have the ability to prevent the Capitol riot and didn't. You know, he just let it happen. And the Capitol riot was to a large extent planned on Facebook. And generally, Zuckerberg is allowing conspiracy theories. He's allowing lies, political radicals, political nutcases to, he's not only allowing them to post, but because they get, you know, posts that reflect anger and conspiracies and people expressing strong emotions, because those posts get a lot of engagement, those posts rise up and they get viewed by more people and more people get engaged. So Zuckerberg is responsible for spreading conspiracy theory, right-wing, crazy ideology in the world. Not only that, but during the Myanmar genocide of the Muslims in Myanmar, they used Facebook to inspire the genocide. So therefore, Facebook is responsible because the algorithms, I guess, encourage this. At least that's the claim. Indeed, one article in Atlantic suggests that we should view Facebook as a hostile foreign power and treat it like a hostile foreign power. It's basically a country, a massive country, bigger than China. It's got 2.7 billion users, bigger than China and India combined. And we should deal with it as a foreign power. You know how you deal with foreign powers who are your enemy? You can imagine. All of these problems, political radicalization, polarization, political confrontation, fear, emotionalism online. Shockingly, I didn't know this. Did you guys know this? Facebook exacerbates that. Yeah, it does. And the solution is, well, we'll get to some of that later. I mean, what is it here that we don't know? All this political stuff we know. There's nothing new here. We've been talking about political radicalization as a consequence of Facebook and the algorithms for a long time. But many have been complaining about the fact that Facebook is trying to, quote, do something about it, but you don't like what they're doing about it, so you want to regulate Facebook so that they stop restricting, let's say, right-wing populism and right-wing conspiracy theories. But that would be, but you want them to stop doing that, but then they'd be exacerbating this stuff even more so. It was interesting to see Ted Cruz and Senator Lee at the hearing today try to support their anti-Facebook agenda and try to shift it to, political free speech, as if it's political broadly, or caring about the children, when all it is a naked power grab and an attempt to bring controls, political controls, over Facebook. I mean, we know the left wants to do that. You should have heard Senator Bloomberg's opening. It was just horrific. This is, he was I think he was the district attorney or the state attorney general for Connecticut. And they did some horrible, horrible things to businessmen. Now he's brought that same attitude to the Senate. Yeah. Is it a surprise to anybody that anger produces engagement? That social media is incentivized to highlight that anger? That the more times you click, like, or share on a post that expresses anger, that is going to expand its reach, and that all of that will create more animosity and more polarization? Is Facebook responsible for conspiracy theories, or the people who start and promote and support and like and share conspiracy theories responsible? I mean, this is a real problem on Facebook. I don't want to minimize it. And this is, I want this to be the context of our discussion today, if you can hold this as a context. What Facebook is trying to do is really, really, really hard. Generally, the internet has created a lot of new issues that we have never dealt with, that technology has never dealt with. It's created the ability to connect between people at the speed of light, fast, on anything, anywhere. It's created the potential of misinformation on scales that were unimaginable even 30, 40 years ago. It's created the potential and the reality of polarization, of people living within bubbles, only listening to their peers. Now, arguably, all of media does that. Certainly the biased mainstream media lives in its own bubble, creates its own bubble. People who read that bubble reinforce that bubble, send it to their own friends, and everybody reads them. And then there's alternative media, however you want to define it. And it creates its little bubble, and everybody reads it. What Facebook and social media does is amplifies the effects of both those. But it's not like the internet has created something new that didn't exist before. It's not like misinformation didn't exist before. It's not like political bias didn't exist before. It's not even like conspiracy theories didn't exist before. I mean, the truth conspiracy theory about 9/11 existed before social media. And conspiracy theories about the murder of JFK existed before the existence of the internet. And conspiracies about the elders of Zion existed before anybody even dreamed of an internet. And one could argue that some of these conspiracy theories, certainly conspiracy theories about Jews drinking the blood of Christian children on certain holidays, those conspiracy theories existed before the printing press. So, and they were prevalent. Witches, witchcraft, the whole idea of witches and witchcraft, and the biggest conspiracy theory of all, religion, has existed and proliferated and dominated the world for a very, very long time. But the conspiracy theories, yes, I mean, the internet makes it worse in some sense. And we can see the political culture in the United States deteriorate dramatically at the same time as the rise of social media. Correlation does not equal causation, but they are correlated, and they might be a causal relationship there. We don't know there isn't. But let's blame Facebook because they're big, they're successful. We hate success. Envy drives much of this. And God forbid, they are really, really, really profitable. They make a lot of money. How dare they? Again, there are real issues here. There are real issues regarding privacy and what Facebook does with the data. And there are real issues we, as users of Facebook, should really, really care about and should demand to know more about how Facebook uses our data. If not, we should leave. But these are all issues between us and Facebook. The woman who got these thousands of documents is a thief. I hope Facebook sues her. We know she won't come under criminal prosecution, but she's a thief. She's stolen private documents. She's stolen information that was not public. If she traded on that information, she would be prosecuted as an insider trader. But she is trading on that information. She's going to make a fortune as a public speaker. If you've seen her, she looks good and she's a good speaker, and she's going to make a career out of this. On private information that's not hers to give. That she stole from Facebook. What Facebook is trying to do, to figure out what information to serve to whom, under what circumstances, in what order, when, during the day, how it's presented, all of that, is a stunningly complex issue. It's an issue that all social media is grappling with, is struggling with. There's no obvious answer. Should they allow everybody to post? Should they eliminate some posts? Should they ban some people or not? None of this is obvious. Nobody's ever done this before. I said this years ago about Facebook. They're trying to navigate a very complicated issue. And the issue of people responding emotionally and people reinforcing the emotions of other people and all of that, that's just happens. It's how people behave, unfortunately, when they're not being rational. Facebook's not responsible for that, even if it amplifies it. So yeah, it's struggling to navigate the complexities of the world in which they live and in the world in which, to some extent, they created. And if you have a better algorithm, a better solution, go for it. You know, the whistleblower's revolutionary solution is instead of ranking the posts based on engagement and sending them out to users based on engagement, they should be based on chronology. But then I'd be flooded with stuff that doesn't interest me. Is that really what people want? But no, the whole point of these hearings is not to give people what they want, but to give people what the whistleblower wants, what the central planner wants, what Senator Cruz wants, what Senator Blumenthal wants, what the Democrats and Republicans together want us to know or not to know. They want to define what's mainstream, what's acceptable, what's okay for us to engage in. They want the algorithm. They want to tinker with the algorithm. They don't even know what an algorithm is, but they want to tinker with the algorithm. They want to control us. Facebook is a means to that end. They realize the power that Zuckerberg has, and they want it. You see this, particularly somebody like Ted Cruz. And they couch it now in the name of saving the children. So what is the so-called the internal study at Facebook that was such a bombshell, such a revelation? What does it actually say? So you can find this, the Wall Street Journal has published this. It's a PowerPoint. It turns out that 32% of teen girls said that when they felt bad about their bodies, Instagram, which is of course owned by Facebook, made them feel worse. All right, so 32% of teen girls said that when they felt bad about their bodies, Instagram made them feel worse. Okay. I mean, let's be real here. There are real issues that our teenagers are facing. There are real issues of depression. There are real issues of alienation. There are real issues of second-handedness, looking at other people, focusing on other people. But the real issues that every teenager faces of trying to fit in and trying to understand, trying to find one's own identity, define one's own sexuality, know who you are, discover who you are. You've all been teenagers. You all know this. We all went through it. And one of the challenges of modern society is that when we attain a certain level of wealth, when life is not just about survival, people have time to think about, well, what's my body like as compared to other bodies? Am I sexually appealing enough as compared to the latest, I don't know, Playboy, Penthouse, whatever the thing is today, model that's on Instagram? Or as compared to the other girls in my class that are posting bikini shots of themselves on Instagram? Now, you've got to ask where the parents, given that these kids are putting it up on Instagram, why aren't the parents have any control over that? But yeah, teenage girls, probably more than boys, focus way too much of their time, energy, thought, focus on their bodies. Now, I said yesterday, was it yesterday? Sunday, that you should care about being healthy and fit. But you can control the genetic side of it. You can control the particular body type you have. You can control, what's nature has provided through your genetics. I mean, you can have plastic surgery to change it if you really want. But look, before there was Instagram, there was the Kardashians, right? Everybody wants to look like Kim Kardashian. There was Baywatch. Remember Baywatch? There was television more broadly. There were magazines with all the big models and big movie stars. There was Teen Vogue. Remember all the accusations against Teen Vogue and how it made girls feel body shame or whatever? I mean, this is not a new problem that Instagram created. This is a problem that exists and a problem that is exacerbated by the easy availability of Instagram. And now, the difference between Instagram and, let's say, Teen Vogue, is that Instagram allows you to compare your body or the way you look to other girls in your class. Other girls in your class. So it's become a lot more personal in a sense. Yeah, these are all issues. These are all issues that we probably don't, as individuals, as family members, as mothers, as fathers, we probably don't do enough to deal with our teenage kids. And there's no question. These are things that need to be talked about, need to be discussed within the family, outside of the family, in society. But this idea that somehow Facebook or Instagram is responsible for this, and somehow that the government should have some kind of say about what happens on Instagram, is absurd and nuts. I mean, parents need to step in. But it's not just Instagram. I mean, I don't know if you guys have been on the internet recently. I mean, porn is available. I mean, and the most weird, disgusting, nutty pornography is available like that online to any kid, which is horrible. And parents need to step in and control. Parents, not the government, not Facebook, not Instagram. Parents. But it's not just teenage girls. We live in a society where people are constantly looking at what the neighbor has, how the neighbor lives, what the neighbor gets. Where people are constantly thinking, oh, I need to live up to their standards. This is not unique to children. It's unique to our culture, and there's something devastatingly wrong about our culture. It's a culture of second-handed people. It's a culture of collectivists. It's a culture that doesn't take their own life seriously. It's a culture that is not selfish enough, selfish in the rational, long-term sense. It's a culture that doesn't think enough, doesn't use reason enough. It's a culture that's jealous and envious. That's the problem. Not Facebook. It's us. Like always. It's not immigrants. It's not China. It's not elites. It's us. Look around you. You're the problem unless you're acting, unless you're doing something to make your life different, to make your life better, to make your life meaningful, and to protect your kids. So, take this report about suicide, about, the girls feeling worse about this because of Instagram. Okay, so they do. So we now have feelings. This is exacerbating feelings of inadequacy among teenage girls. Okay. But now there's a leap that the media is all engaged in. And the leap is between that and suicide. And then the Senate hearing that kept being repeated over and over and over again. This idea that Facebook is encouraging kids to commit suicide. Yeah, it's depressing to compare yourself to the most beautiful girl in the class. I mean, Janice Ian, I don't know how many of you remember Janice Ian. Janice Ian wrote a song about this before Facebook, before the internet. A song that I fell in love with when I was 15. I think most 15-year-olds fell in love with, unless you were the handsomest, prettiest girl in the class. And that was at 17. If you've never heard the song at 17, go check it out on Spotify or on Apple Music or something, right? I don't have the words here. But basically, it expresses exactly this. At 17, I learned the truth that something, basically that the pretty girls get the guy, and it's rough. Yeah, it's rough. So, it's rough to be a teenage girl. And we live in a culture that makes it rougher, and that's sad. So it turned out that when they did surveys, when they did focus groups at Facebook, Instagram employees heard directly from teens who were struggling. Quote, "I felt like I had to fight to be considered pretty or even visible," one team said of her experience on Instagram. Again, Is that an experience unique to Instagram? Or is that an experience unique to teens? Isn't that every teen movie ever made? About the kids who feel invisible, can't be seen, aren't appreciated for their mind. It turns out that according to the research that Facebook did this research because it cares, shockingly. Among teens experiencing suicidal ideation, so this idea of suicide, not the actual act, the idea of suicide, 6% of Americans cited Instagram as the first place they considered self-harm. Now, did Instagram cause them to feel this way? Did it exacerbate it? What is the causal relationship? We don't know. At least in the documents that were revealed by the whistleblower, we have no indication. So yeah, there's a toxic culture in the world in which we live. And teens are responding to that, and some of them are responding to it horrifically with suicide. And yes, many of them spend a lot of time on places like Instagram. All right, now what? Well, the conclusion is, if you listen to our amazing journalists and our unbiased media, basically the conclusion is that girls are being killed by Mark Zuckerberg. He's in the business of killing girls. By the way, boys who nobody talks about in regard to Facebook, maybe because Facebook didn't do a study about boys, or maybe boys are not that into Instagram. Interestingly enough, Instagram is primarily girls. YouTube, what you guys are on, is dominantly men, right? 90%. 94% of the people watching the Yaron Brook Show on YouTube are men. Not true on Facebook, not true on other platforms, but on YouTube, it's men. Instagram, mainly women. Just a statistical fact. Interpret it how you want. Well, it turns out that boys commit suicide at about 4 times the rate girls do. And yet they don't have that much exposure to Instagram. They spend a lot of time on YouTube. It's probably those cat videos that are killing them. Or maybe the boys are spending time on porn sites, which is probably what boys are doing, and feeling inadequate as a consequence of that and committing suicide. 4 times more often than teenage girls. But, you know, the real question is, why? Why are so many people, why are so many young people, why are so many of our kids committing suicide? Is it because of dysfunctional families? Is it because of lack of friends and social struggles, or romantic crushes gone amiss? Is it because bad sexual experiences? Is it because of school? School. I wonder if school makes you want to kill yourself. Maybe. Why don't we have the Secretary of Education or school boards out there explaining why there's so many suicides? Because I bet you if you asked teenagers, does high school make you want to kill yourself? You'd get a lot of yeses. A lot of yeses. I mean, I interviewed Brad Thompson once about what school does to kids. Public schools in particular. I mean, public schools, not every school. But the boredom, the drudgery, the nihilism, the anti-objectivity that it inculcates. And now we've got, you know, critical race theory or whatever imposed on all of that. The guilt of being white, I guess. Schools. But no, that's complicated. That's a complex issue. We can't go there. What are we going to do about it anyway? Let's go after Facebook instead. Senator Cruz, Senator Lee, Republicans holding up the flag of freedom, used to be the senators I used to note as the most capitalist of all the senators out there, are now single-mindedly like maniacs, pursuing Facebook as the ultimate cause of all ills of society. Of course, last week, Facebook, Congress dragged out Facebook's head of global safety, Antigone Davis. Antigone, what a great name. Antigone Davis, head of global safety. And they discussed Instagram's practices of encouraging young girls to commit suicide, I guess. It's all available on video. You can watch it. It's a 2-3 hour thing. And let's be clear. I mean, Congress interrogating, questioning businessmen is one of the most farcical, ridiculous, mostly funny, sad, depressing things you will ever see. It just proves ultimately that even people who have relatively high IQs and who go to very prestigious schools, most of these senators went to Yale or Harvard, are complete and utter idiots who have no clue how the world works, who have no clue what the problems and the issues in the real world really are, have no clue about social media or the internet, and have no clue about the complexity of the world in which they live. These are the people. These are the people. These idiots, excuse my language, who sit in judgment, who write laws to rule us, to govern us, sit there as if they have some superior power, superior insight, when all they're exhibiting usually is their ignorance and stupidity, and question the people actually changing the world. I mean, Senator Blumenthal, who I've gained a new low appreciation of, he's a Democrat from Connecticut. They set up an experiment in his office. They created a fake account of a 13-year-old interested in dieting content, anorexic supposedly. And then they watched as supposedly Facebook fed her all kinds of content, which they never showed. So we don't really know how bad it was, but Senator Blumenthal says it was really, really bad, and encouraged this girl to be even more anorexic. How did they do that? What kind exactly? Blumenthal, Blackburn, another great senator, asked Davis if she was aware Facebook was enabled the Chinese government tracking of the Uyghur Muslims, right? The Muslims that are in concentration camps. And Davis said, quote, "We did not put the tracking spyware in. We were the ones who removed it. We then briefed the Senate on it." So basically Davis is saying the only reason you know that the Chinese used Facebook to track these people is because we discovered it, we eliminated it, and we told you about it. This is how dumb and how single-minded the senators are on destroying Facebook, but how ill-informed they are. All they want is a soundbite. I stood up for the Uyghurs in China. I stood up to the Chinese government. Senator Blackburn, I mean, my guess is a Republican or a Democrat. It doesn't matter. That's the thing. The depressing thing. It doesn't matter. They're all in this. They're all together in this. They're all in agreement. They all want to destroy Facebook for slightly different reasons, but basically for control. So here's Ted Cruz, brilliant Ted Cruz, right? The senator that so many of us were hopeful about. He read from Atlas Shrugged, after all, in his filibuster. He seemed to be a pro-free market guy. He voted for some good things. He used to be pretty good. No more. Senator Cruz asked Davis, at some point, this is just comical, it's not content-wise, where she was, because she was by video conference. So where she was physically located. Davis said she was in a D.C. office, so right, not far from Congress, right? And Cruz demanded to know why she was hiding. And she said, this is what I was told to do because of your COVID protocols. Not mine, your COVID protocols. But Cruz was angry because she wasn't there in the room with him. Then there was the case of, and again, this is a lot of this is from Pirate Wires. There was the case where Blumenthal insisted that Finstas, I don't know what Finstas is. It's a slang term for second accounts that you often start by young people looking to engage with smaller groups of friends. So Blumenthal insisted this was a Facebook product. And like Davis had to explain, it's not a Facebook product. It's what people do on Facebook. We don't release Finstas. This is what people create. They create small groups that interact. It's just, and it goes on and on and on. It's just, I mean, at some point there was some discussion about whether on Instagram, for example, there's this issue of, you like stuff. So there's a sense in which you're quantifying somebody's popularity by how many likes they get and things like that, right? And so Instagram, aware of this, and not wanting to feed into this teenage thing about popularity, they ran a study, an experiment, where they basically took it off. They took off the like buttons, all of that symbolize status. And they ran the experiment. And according to them, and we don't have access to the full experiment, it didn't work. People are no less happy. And part of the reasoning is thought to be as a consequence of the comments. So the comments reflected people's popularity or lack of popularity more than the thumbs up or the thumbs down or whatever it was. So there is nothing new in this whistleblower other than just one more attempt to destroy big tech, to go after big tech, to limit big tech. Thank you, Bester Hank. That's very generous. There's nothing new here that you didn't know before. And if you watch the Senate hearings, there's nothing new you will learn about the quality or ability of your senator. Or if you do learn something, it'll be that they're even worse than you thought, which is what happened to me. Or about what happened at Facebook, or what's going on at Facebook, or what will happen at Facebook. In none of these hearings is there any concern for actual people. Is there any concern for individual rights? Is there any concern for property rights? Is there any concern for culture? For what kind of culture we want to live in? For the ideas that would shape such a culture? There's no concern for the fundamental psychological and philosophical questions that are at the heart of teen suicide, of the unhappiness that is in our culture, of the polarization that's in our politics, that's in the nastiness, the nastiness of our engagement with ideas, in the emotionalism of the way people interact with one another, with ideas, with the world. There's nothing in the congressional hearings to address any of that. Indeed, all the congressional hearings do is make a mockery of Congress, make a mockery of the idea of governance, make a mockery of research. I mean, this whistleblower is obviously a disgruntled leftist who came into Facebook, didn't like what she saw for political, ideological reasons, and decided to do something about it because it's a civic duty. If you listen to her, she talks a lot about the common good, the public interest. She talks a lot about what she thinks Facebook should do, what her vision for Facebook is, how she thinks the culture should be. She's just another authoritarian who wants to dictate our lives, who wants to tell us how to live, what to do, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. Just like the senators who listened to her and treated her with unbelievable respect, which they would never give to a corporate executive. Never, ever. If you look at the hearing from last week when they interrogated Antigone Davis, and you look at the hearing today where they ask softball questions to the whistleblower, I forget her name, the difference is unbelievable. I mean, there's no objectivity here. There's no trying to reach truth. Did anybody confront her with the fact that she was stealing information that wasn't hers? No, God forbid. So it's very depressing. And, you know, where we're heading is to some kind of breakup of Facebook. We're heading to bipartisan support for something that is going to hamper Facebook, hamper our ability to use it, hamper its ability to serve us. Clearly, we're heading towards greater government control over speech. I mean, imagine if the government comes in and says, Facebook has to have an algorithm that presents information chronologically to viewers. Really? We're for central planning? People in DC know what the good is and how to achieve it. We just need to shut up and listen. God forbid we start a company and be incredibly successful because we're serving a need of people. Maybe the need is not irrational. People buy pet rocks. They buy all kinds of ridiculous things all the time. Maybe we need a rational dictator to tell them what they can and cannot do. No, that's a disaster. A disaster. All right, I think that's my spiel for today. Questions about Facebook, about social media, about Mark Zuckerberg, about sex. We talked about sex 2 days ago, but you never ask questions about sex. You guys are a boring audience. You used to ask lots of questions about sex to Leonard Peikoff, but for some reason, not to me. All right. Let's go through some of the Super Chat questions. Let's see who is here on for $20. Only one $20 question. We got a lot of support. We're at about $300 for the show, so about halfway to the $600. But I hope you enjoyed the show. Some of you seem to enjoy the show. Thought it was good. Greta and Facebook and a lot of good contact. Show your appreciation, value for value, by supporting the show. Either go to yaronbrookshow.com/support it, or Super Chat here, or Patreon, or any other way. But Super Chat is a good way to support the show. All right. Ian, $50, says, great show today. Did you see the excerpt of Pinker's new book on rationality where he says you can get is from art and ends up with the golden rule and impartiality, the main ingredients of morality, is not just a logical ingredient of morality, is not just a logical nicety. I saw something like that. I haven't read the book. I want to read the book before I comment. But yes, I mean, he's basically taking the line that now a number of people have with regard to morality, which is a great improvement over the past. We've got Sam Harris. We've now got, I think, Steven Pinker. We've got, what's his name from the, what the hell? I just opened, anyway. The guy from Skeptic Magazine who interviewed me, Michael Shermer. all of them have written books now arguing that you can derive morality from reality. You can derive an art from an is, right? And I think they do a pathetic job as compared to Ayn Rand. But it is interesting that suddenly there are these books out there, again, Shermer and Harris and Pinker, and I think there's one other, that present morality as if it can be derived from reality. Now, that was not true in the past. So it's, I think, a move in the right direction. As I told Michael Shermer in my interview with him, and if you haven't watched that interview, I highly recommend you watch the interview. As I told Michael Shermer in the interview, I think it's tragic that they are not taking Rand seriously. Because Rand solves the is-art problem and provides not just the superficial morality of golden rule and impartiality meaning some form of objectivity, but she provides an entire ethical system, based on the idea of man's life as the standard, based on bridging the is-odd gap by understanding that morality is about solving the problem of life, of living, of how to live. The fact that human beings face this fundamental alternative of life or death. And then the questions around how to live or what morality is engaged with. How to survive. How to be a human being. That's what morality is around with. But you have to get it from the perspective of survival. That we, and this is the problem of Harris and Pinker and Sherman have, is they're determinists. So Rand's genius is that she says, we as human beings are not programmed to survive. We don't know how to survive. That's why we need morality. We need to figure out how to survive. But you see, if you're a determinist, why do you need morality? So the real revolution that Ayn Rand presents is this idea of choice. And this is why free will goes throughout her philosophy. You can't have objectivism without the idea of free will. Because it's about the idea that we're not programmed, we're not determined, we don't know how to survive without using your mental faculty, without choosing to focus it, without choosing reason. We cannot survive. And therefore, what's morality about? It's about choosing to think. That's the essence of the objectivist morality. The primary value is reason, the primary virtue is rationality. But it's in the face of the alternative of life and death, where we choose life, one, and then we must choose how to live. And to live, we must choose to be rational. That's, by the way, why the moral is the practical and the practical is the moral. Because the whole morality is focused on the practical. What it takes to survive, what it takes to live, what it takes to be a human being. All right, Joe asks, I get what you're saying about everyone comparing themselves to everyone else in an unhealthy way. But if we didn't do this at all, what use would heroic figures or influential role models be? Could you expand on that? Yes, I mean, having a hero, having a role model is not the same as trying to match the lifestyle of the Joneses. And a hero and a role model is not about their material success. It's about, primarily, I think heroes are, it's about the moral values that they represent. It's about their moral standing. It's about if they've achieved financial success, how they achieved it. Like, I don't admire Steve Jobs because he was rich. I respect that he was rich. I think it's great that he was rich. But I don't admire Steve Jobs for being rich. I admire the way he became rich, the kind of mind that he had that made it possible for him to be rich. And I idealize him if I'm going to use him as a role model or as a heroic figure. I idealize him. I take the essentials, the positive characteristics, and I want to mimic them. But I don't say my neighbor has a Ferrari, I want a Ferrari. My neighbor just built a pool, we should build a pool. My neighbor's wife has big boobs, so get a boob job and get big boobs, right? That's being second-handed, manipulated by everything around you instead of being first-handed. Choosing your life for yourself. Again, within the context of the choices you make for your life, you find a hero that you can use to inspire you to achieve your goals. But that's very different than the second-handedness of checking out your neighbor. Somebody says Steve Jobs died 10 years ago. Yes, it was 10 years ago. I'll talk about Steve Jobs probably on the next show. So we will talk about Steve Jobs. I wanted to commemorate the 10-year anniversary of his death. I will do that on probably the next show. I've got a number of really good topics. We're going to be talking about, is America heading towards a civil war? Is it heading towards a splitting of America into many states or many countries? That is a big, big, big topic right now among conservative writers. We'll talk about that. I want to talk about the Pandora Papers, which again is this big revelation about people hiding money from the tax man. And then I want to talk about Steve Jobs. So that'll probably be the topic of the show next show, which will be on Thursday. Today's Tuesday, so on Thursday. All right. Theme Master, thank you for the 20 pounds. Are there any solid theories as to why males commit suicide 4 times more than females? I don't know if there are. One could speculate, but I'm sure that in the field of psychology this has been studied. I can just off the top say something like, I'm going to get in trouble for these, but boys generally are more prone to action, not just emotions and thought, but to act on them. Also, boys seem to care less about the effect their action have on other people. Girls seem to have more. So there are studies that show that people don't commit suicide when they are in close contact with relatives. So when they're living at home and things like that. So, and part of the hypothesis there is when they realize kind of how badly these other people would take it, they don't do it, right? But I don't know. It could be the drugs that we give. I mean, people are saying Ritalin. It could be the drugs that we give boys. It could be this is, I guess, Brad Thompson's theory. We don't allow them to be boys. Put aside the drugs. We just don't allow them to be boys. We feminize them. We take away the spirit of boyhood, if you will. We coddle them. We don't allow them to take risks. We don't allow them to be physical. We don't allow them to express the energy that some boys at least have to express, have to manifest, right? So I expect, that would be me, right? I would have been, if I was born 20, 30 years later, I would have been on drugs. I would have been on Ritalin or whatever, right? So, I think men are repressed more. Girls are much more allowed to be girls. And by the way, girls who want to be masculine in a sense. Girls who want to be tomboys, allowed to be tomboys. And then maybe they go through puberty and they're not tomboys anymore. And that's fine. And everybody accepts that. Boys who might express the more feminine side are ridiculed. So I think even though we focus on the social pressures on girls, I mean, in some ways I think it's more difficult to be a boy than it is and to be allowed to be a boy. Now, part of this would depend on, I haven't seen the trends, I should look this up. Suicides among boys on the increase faster than among girls, as the gap always existed. Did boys always commit suicide more than girls? Does it change over time? When boys were allowed to go crazy and be boys, did they commit suicide less? I just don't know any of that. But we can check that out. I'll look up the statistics about suicide among young people by sex and by gender, sex. What is it called these days? I don't know. I'll let you know. All right. Quinundrum. Landon says men repress more. Be a man, don't show emotion. Yeah, there's definitely an element of that, particularly when I was growing up. It was all about that. Don't show emotion. Don't feel pain. Don't complain ever about anything, even when there's reason to complain. Suck it up. I mean, particularly in a macho, militarized society like Israel, that was very much the case. And if you were feminine as a man, as a boy, you were ridiculed in our culture. I mean, you did not have a good time. It was not good. Okay, Quinundrum. I've been making my own code of law for fun, and I was wondering how long copyright and patents should last. Ayn Rand said we should have copyright and patent laws, but I don't believe she suggested how long they should last. I mean, I don't know. I would look into the work of Adam Mossoff, who I think is the objectivist who's done the most work on patents and copyrights. He's written about it quite extensively. It has to do with, in terms of copyrights, I think with the lifespan of the owner of the copyright, and maybe something a little beyond that. With patents, it has to do with competitive pressures and so on. I think Ayn Rand lays the fundamental principles on which you would base how long they would be, but you would have different regimes come up, different legal regimes come up with different lengths. I don't think there's one platonic length for copyright or patents. All right, we've got some lower dollar amount questions we're going to go through. We are at $360. I think I'm permitted by Ron to bug you a little bit here. So we're at about $360. We've got 240 to go to reach Ali's goal, which is 600. It would be great if some of the whales in the audience stepped in and got us there quickly, make Ali's day and get this over with, and I wouldn't have to say a word anymore. On the other hand, it would be great if some of you just used the Super Chat feature and asked questions, preferably at this point in the evening. It's already an hour, 20 minutes into the show, $20 questions or more, right? Let's try to eliminate the $5, $2, $1. You've had plenty of opportunities to do those. Try to do $20 or more questions, and that way we'll get faster to the goal, and I'll be answering those questions. Okay. Oh, by the way, you can also support the show like Super Kill just did. Thank you. Without asking a question, that's also acceptable. Since we've got a lot of people, relatively speaking, watching, let me just remind you, if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe to the show. I think it's worthwhile subscribing. You can always unsubscribe later, but you press the bell and it'll let you know when the show is going live, so you can listen more often. But yeah, check out the channel. There's a ton of videos. Check out the playlist. I just created a playlist of the Yaron Rules for Life. Many of you haven't listened to those, I know. But Yaron Rules for Life, they're now 9 episodes. I've got them all in a playlist, easy for you to navigate to, easy for you to get to. I think you'll enjoy them. I've been encouraged to consider writing a book, Yaron's 13 Rules for Life. I guess one more than Jordan Peterson, or I guess he's got 2 books, so maybe I should do Yaron's 25 Rules for Life to cover, to have it more than both his books. But yeah, you can find all those over there. All right, let's go. Landon says, Greta and Trump have a lot in common. Yeah. I'm not going to get into Trump rant right now unless, somebody is willing to give me $50 for anti-Trump rant. Grant, thank you for the $50. That is incredibly generous. I really appreciate it. That gets us a lot closer. That puts us over 400, which is kind of our minimal standing old goal. And we can now focus on getting to the 600. Michael asks, Corey steps in from Australia again. Often helps us get to this point. Kyle Kalinsky said in response and in agreement to Noam Chomsky video clip critiquing capitalism that it's about principles. I guess he's really got objectivism on the ropes, huh? Principles would destroy his own argument. Well, it depends on what the principles are based on, right? If the principles are based on sacrifice, altruism, the value of the group above the individual, then, yeah, it's about his principles, the anti-life, anti-progress, anti-prosperity, destructive, suicidal principles of collectivism and altruism. So you can have bad principles. And yes, Corey is absolutely right. It's about principles. I'm for pro-life, pro-progress, pro-success, pro-prosperity, pro-innovation principles. And those principles beat Kyle's principles anytime when they're presented right. And when people are willing to have an open mind about them. Now, partially, we'll test that because next week I'm debating one of Kyle's heroes, Richard Wolff. I'll be debating Richard Wolff at the University of Pennsylvania. You all can come. You're all invited. You can sign up at the University of Pennsylvania website. It's open to the public. It's being run by the Student Union at the University of Pennsylvania. So I expect it to be a big event with a lot of people. We'll see. But I'm hoping for several hundred people. We'll see. But partially, I'm expecting many of you to come. That'll be fantastic. Michael asks, should riding your bicycle with a baby on your back be illegal? No, 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 and no. It's not the job of the government to reduce, risk for children. If you're clearly abusing your child, the government should step in. But it should be pretty rare for the government to step in. It's not there to prevent, to make sure that you're a good parent or to make sure that you're not taking too much risks with your child. Not the job of government. All right, let's see. All right, we got a $20 question that came in from John. Why do you say Noam Chomsky is evil? Because evil, what is evil? Evil is the irrational. Evil is evasion of reality, so anti-facts. Evil is anti-life. Well, if you're evading, if you're anti-reason, anti-facts, anti-rationality, anti-thinking, then you're going to be anti-human life. And Noam Chomsky is all of the above. Chomsky evades and ignores the benefits of capitalism that he sees with his own eyes. And the ultimate consequence, so he's a complete evader, is irrational in his hatred of the United States of America, both in its foreign policy and its in domestic policy, with regard to capitalism and with regard to what America has done in the world. And Noam Chomsky's been a supporter of some of the most brutal, horrible, disgusting and homicidal regimes in human history. Maybe most famously Pol Pot and what happened in the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. He supported them even after it was known what they had done, because they were true to the spirit of egalitarianism. But he supports Maduro and Chavez in Venezuela. He has supported every nasty, anti-life regime of the 20th and 21st century. Well, with the exception of the Nazis and the fascists. So anybody on the left. He believes in communist anarchy, which is a belief in bloodshed and the subjugation and enslavement of the individual. So, yeah, I mean, Noam Chomsky is evil by any definition of the word evil that takes into account human reason and human thought, not just action. Yeah, he's never killed anybody, but he supported people who killed people. All right, Ayan Mekat from Israel. Somebody please give me the nuclear pill. She could give her the nuclear pill. She could actually save the environment without wrecking the economy. Question is, if she advocated for nuclear, would she still be popular or thrown aside? But she would never advocate for nuclear because she's not advocating for solutions. She's advocating for control and death and destruction. She's not an innocent person trying, although, you know, she's young, so you could argue maybe she is innocent. And I have argued, at least a couple of years ago when she was 16, that she was young and innocent. I don't know how innocent she is anymore. She's had 2 years to study this. Should be treated as an adult. But yeah, I don't know if she'd be thrown aside if she advocated for nuclear. That would be an interesting experiment, but I wouldn't call her, I don't think she's open to that option. Oh, you want to cause us to all be irradiated and melt and, you know, die of cancer or whatever. Dean, another question from Israel. When Leonard Peikoff talks about principles, he says a man needs to think of his entire lifespan when taking an action. Isn't she thinking long-term if the scientist says global warming will end human life if we don't act? Well, if it were true, yes. If it's true that human life will end if we don't act, then yeah, that's thinking long-term. And but there's no evidence, zero, zilch, nada, that that's true. And then, of course, what does acting mean? What action? Stopping burning carbon fuel? Or building dikes to prevent flooding? Going nuclear? Moving away from flood zones? What does acting mean? Are the actions long-term pro-life? Are the actions to sustain human life or to lower CO2? Not the same thing. We can't lower CO2. Forget about it. In order to live, we need to burn fossil fuels. So how do we live with it? That's acting. Juan asks, still time for the Super Chat questions, and we're only $100. $100.50 would get us to $600 and make Ali happy. So $100.50. Go for it, guys. Juan asks, there's only 3 questions. You don't have a lot of time. If you're going to act, it's like one of these auctions, going once, going twice, third time is gone. It's now or never, right? You want to get us to 600? Do it now. By the way, just highlighting my name and making a comment in the chat does not get my attention. You got to use the Super Chat. There's a reason I do that. I can't keep track of the Super Chat. Can't keep track of the context in which you're writing and everything else. Juan writes, do you think she resonates with AOC, who is probably the only person in this country who comes close to her, or is it the other way around? Oh, I think Greta is much more powerful than AOC. And AOC probably looks up to Greta, not the other way around. AOC is I mean, she just doesn't have the power that a Greta does. She doesn't quite have the rhetoric. AOC, as I've said before, is good at what she does. She's smart. She knows what she's doing. She's got a goal. It's evil, but she knows what she's doing. But Greta, because she's single issue, because she's young, and because she's really figured out the rhetoric, I think it's the other way around. I think it's AOC who looks up to Greta. But yeah, Greta has issues. You can see the issues Greta has in her eyes. She's nuts, little nuts, and definitely has that megalomaniac thing going. She's definitely a megalomaniac. Wyatt asks, people like Rand Paul have raised legit questions about Fauci's integrity, while Amesh Adalja has been unquestioning in his praising Fauci. Should AOI get a second opinion when it comes to COVID analysis? No, I don't think so. I have not seen anything about Amesh's discussion of these issues that has been anti-factual. And put aside the evaluation of Fauci. Amesh has a huge amount of respect for Fauci based on Fauci's history as a scientist. Here comes Zvika, gets us over the 600 hump, or almost like 55 cents short. Thank you, Zvika, I really appreciate it. Fauci, Amish has actually criticized Fauci. And Amish has criticized Fauci in the sense that Fauci's not a politician. Fauci's not a policymaker, and shouldn't be put in the position of a policymaker. And he's been put in that position, and he's made a lot of errors in that position. And Amish has said that. But that does not diminish Fauci as a scientist, which is what Amish respects about him. But no, I see no reason to question Amish. I heard him, I thought he gave a brilliant talk at Ocon this year. It was excellent. It was thorough and excellent. Every time I've had a question where I've doubted something, Amish has the facts, he has the science, he has the evidence. And when I read up about COVID, I haven't seen anything that contradicts what Amish has been advocating for. I haven't seen anything that contradicts the facts that he cites and the evidence that he cites. And I read a lot about COVID, including all the various theories out there that have basis or don't have basis. I've looked into the studies of ivermectin. I've looked into all these things. And I think Amish has been right on target on all of them. So, I mean, my view is if I had a question, I would ask him, right? Hey, you said this, but it looks like it's something else. But he's been right on. And he's been right on since February of last year. Since early February of 2020, when I first interviewed him about the thing, he's been on the money in terms of the number of people who are going to die, in terms of what the response should be. He's been consistent throughout. Yes, people change their minds about things like masks. I think Fauci's wrong about children and about a lot of things. And some of what Rand Paul has raised are legit. Some of the things that Rand Paul has raised are not. But okay, Fauci's not perfect in a sense that he's always going to get stuff right. Amish has not advocated for the policies that Fauci has. He's against lockdowns. He's against all the stuff with kids. Amish was one of the few people out there saying school should have never closed. So, no, I don't see the need. Now, you say, should I get a second opinion? Well, we do, in a sense. I read extensively. It's not like I just read Amish and say, okay, that's fine. I read extensively about COVID, about the stats, about the data. I read people who I disagree with. I read quite a bit of their stuff. I try to figure out what makes sense, what's right, what I think is right and what I think is wrong. So I don't just rely on Amish, but everything he said so far has panned out. And I have no reason to, go with somebody else. Plus, philosophically, Amish is completely aligned. He's an objectivist. Go find a scientist in the field who's an objectivist. A good a knowledgeable objectivist who OEC student who studied the philosophy, who doesn't just take the philosophy for granted as so many people do, but has actually studied it, takes it seriously, and it is in the public face and being interviewed as an expert, not as an objectivist, and has to face the challenge of how to deal with that, which is not easy. Not easy. Right. I don't know, how did we get to recycling my water bottles? If recycling my water bottles made sense, somebody would pay me for it. Okay, Ian Mirkat says, Greta seems primarily concerned about reducing carbon emissions, not economics or anything like that. That's why I think she could be sold on nuclear. I don't think so. I don't think she is concerned about reducing carbon emissions. I think she hates capitalism. She hates the world in which we live. If you follow her, you see her expressions about capitalism, about industrialization. She hates this world. It's far, far deeper than if nuclear could keep the world like it is and reduce carbon emissions, she'd be against it. She'd find an excuse, just like all the other environmentalists do. She's much more malevolent than I think you're giving her credit for. Corey asks, do you think she's smart? Who? AOC or Greta? I don't doubt she has the capacity, but her whole act just screams outside influence by older intellectuals to me. I mean, in the sense that they're telling her what to say like a parrot. I don't think so. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. I think she writes her own content. I mean, she's obviously influenced by adults. She's influenced by the intellectuals, but I think she writes her own stuff. It comes across as genuine and real. It comes across as she's a manic who believes in this stuff. It's in her eyes. She is a hater. She lives on it, and I think she's very smart. My guess is she has a way above average IQ. Greta. I think she has way above average IQ, and she knows. I mean, you could tell during the speech now, if you watch the whole thing, you can tell she's manipulating the audience. You can tell she's expecting a particular response. Which most public speakers don't do that. They're not good enough to know their audience. She's confident, and she's confident in a way that suggests to me that what she's written is hers. Now, I might be wrong. And I know there are a lot of people waiting out there that she's just being controlled by forces. I think she's the real thing, which is much more scary than if she's being controlled by people. Danny writes, Al Gore's wife is back from the dead, more control. Yes, Al Gore's wife, if you remember, was the one who insisted on labeling music albums and video games because they were only adults and they were corrupting children and they were corrupting everybody and they were causing the same thing. I mean, that's the thing. These things about Facebook and so on, same thing over and over and over and over again. And everything thinks they've invented something new, and it's the same thing over and over again. All right, guys. I am indeed losing my voice. It's time to go. It's late at night. And I will see you on Thursday. So we'll have a show on Thursday. Probably talk about civil war. Are we heading towards civil war? Why is the idea now of the country splitting into numerous states, countries, so popular right now, both on the left and the right? Writers are writing about it extensively this week, last week. We'll talk about an important article by Kagan. Kagan, I think his name is. Anyway, good stuff. And the next Rules for Life is going to be about creativity. And in that context, we'll talk about Steve Jobs. All right, everybody.